I'm hoping that you can all perfectly see the screen. It is absolutely my pleasure to be able to talk to you about this topic, which is very near and dear to my heart. We've been working on with Dr. Valiante in Neuron to Brain Laboratory for the past 6-7 years on this topic with the support of Epilepsy Ontario, Krembil Brain Institute, and UHN. For today's talk, I'm planning to give you some general information about the topic of music and epilepsy overall, about the previous clinical studies that have been done on this topic. Then I will move on with giving you some information about our previous clinical study on this topic. And then that will be followed by sharing with you the plan that we're having for our future work that we're currently enrolling patients for. So starting with a bit of background, epilepsy is the most serious common neurological disorder around the world. The medical management involves the use of anti-seizure medications. However, not all the individuals with epilepsy are capable to reach seizure freedom by the use of anti-seizure medications. There are other treatment options available for these individuals, such as epilepsy surgery, ketogenic diet, deep brain stimulation, and vagus nerve stimulation. However, there are still a group of individuals who are unable to benefit from any of these treatment options. And that's when it becomes important to be able to suggest adjunctive therapeutic options, such as music therapy, that could help seizure control in these individuals. When you look at the topic of music and epilepsy overall, interestingly, you find out that music can both reduce and induce seizures. There's a rare type of epilepsy called musicogenic epilepsy. 1 in 10 million individuals could get it. And basically, individuals can develop seizures by listening to some specific musical pieces. This doesn't mean that that musical piece will cause seizure in every other single individual with epilepsy. It's personalized to each person, and it's rare. However, the majority of the literature on the topic of music and epilepsy had been focused on the subject of reduction of seizures, using music to reduce seizures. In fact, the idea of using music to reduce seizures is a very popular idea among individuals with epilepsy, according to the results of this work that was published a couple of years ago in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, in which around 70, they were asking individuals if they were having a mobile app on their phone, which features do they want to see on this mobile application. And around 75% of these individuals, they said that they would like to listen to relaxing music that may help seizure control, which is very interesting results in my opinion. When you look at the topic of music and epilepsy for the past 20 years, the focus has been on one composer and one piece from this composer. That composer is Mozart, and that piece is called Mozart K448. Basically, the story starts from this person, Gordon L. Shaw, who was a professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy of University of California, and his research was focused on elementary particle theories. Somehow, during the last 20 years of his life, he became interested in understanding neurobiology and mechanisms involved in learning and memory. And in 1990s, him and his colleague, Dr. Francis Rosher, they published a work which showed that listening to Mozart K448 can improve the reasoning skills in college students. Now, a couple of works have been published since then, both replicating and contradicting these results. I'm not going to talk about that work, but what you need to understand is a couple of years after that, the first work on the topic of music and epilepsy was published in 1998, which looked at the effect of listening to Mozart K448. They call it Mozart effect back then, on reducing epileptiform activities or seizure type activities, we call them, in individuals with epilepsy. And looking at the brain recordings of individuals with epilepsy, the results show a reduction of seizure type activities in these individuals while listening to Mozart K448. Interestingly, these results were also observed for an individual who was in comatose state, so not having any attention. and also in individuals with the status epilepticus. So keep having seizures, individuals keep having seizures in this state without fully recovering from the previous one. This work was replicated in 2021 in Nature Scientific Reports. They used Mozart K448 in addition to a few other pieces, classical pieces, and they only reported the reduction of seizure type activities during the period of listening to Mozart K448 only. In terms of the other pieces, other work that looked at other pieces for these individuals, there are very few work. This is one of the few work that compared the effect of listening to Mozart K448 as a treatment piece in children with epilepsy in comparison with Forellis from Beethoven as a control piece. And they show the reduction of seizure type activities only happened during the time of listening to Mozart K448. I'm going to come back to these slides later on. But for now, let's just remember that Mozart K448 could reduce the seizure type activities while Forellis from Beethoven couldn't, based on this, the result of this study. And then for the next 20 years, a number of clinical studies had been published, which looked at the effect of listening to Mozart K448 in children and adults with epilepsy. And basically, in all these works, they were showing the reduction of seizure-related brain activities or reducing the seizure counts while listening to Mozart K448. And in terms of their strength, they were consistent in their findings. They all demonstrated a reduction in seizure-related brain activities and seizure counts. And listening to Mozart K448 didn't cause any adverse effects in children and adults with epilepsy. However, these works also had certain limitations. Only one study was considered to have a good quality clinical design, and none of the studies used another music or sound as a control piece. So as a piece that shouldn't have any, that shouldn't have similar positive effect as Mozart, basically. So basically, they were comparing the period of listening to Mozart K448 to the period of not listening to any specific musical pieces. This is when our research study started in 2016. The first step in designing our research study was to come up with a piece that we could compare it to the Mozart piece itself. And to do that, we, for the first time, what was novel about our study was we shuffled the Mozart piece around randomly in a way that we completely destroyed rhythmicity in it. And it sounded like noise, but mathematically we knew it had certain similarities to Mozart K448. It had similar power spectrum to Mozart K448. And then we asked half of the individuals to start the intervention by daily listening to Mozart K448 for a 3-month period, and then switching to daily listening to shuffled Mozart for a 3-month period. The other group did the opposite. They started the intervention by daily listening to shuffled Mozart for a 3-month period, and then switching to daily listening to Mozart K448 for a 3-month period. Both groups, they went to an initial and final 3-month period in which they didn't listen to any of these musical pieces. And like that, we were able to get an idea about how did their seizure frequency changed with respect to listening to music in different periods, basically. They were free to choose when in the day, what time during the day they want to listen to these musical pieces. They were free to choose whether they want to listen to it by speaker or headphone. They were advised to set the volume on their comfort level, and we were able to monitor their compliance rate or how well they follow the intervention, because there are some days that you can skip the intervention. You might just not feel like listening to any music. So we were able to monitor their compliance rate or how well they follow the intervention by designating a website for that purpose. So they were logging into the website, and we were able to look into their logging times, basically. And we had a wide exclusion criteria, but in summary, any history of brain resection surgery or epilepsy surgery, any changes in an individual's anti-seizure medications, individuals receiving other treatment options such as ketogenic diet or vagus nerve stimulation, individuals unable to recall their seizures, and individuals with previous history of listening to Mozart K448. Our main study outcome for our results section was the changes of the seizure frequency in these individuals. I'm going to start with our compliance rate or to tell you how well individuals followed this intervention. Around 83% of the time on average, they listened to Mozart piece during those 3-month periods, and around 72% of the time they listened to the scrambled Mozart during the control period. This is an example of the seizure diary that was the main outcome of this study. You see how did the seizure frequency change in different period of this information and on this graph during this intervention. For example, this individual during the baseline period, she had around 12 seizures during the 3-month of baseline period. And by listening to Mozart piece, we saw a 64% reduction on total number of seizures during daily listening to Mozart K448. And as expected, by switching to the shuffled Mozart, we saw an increase on the number of seizures. And then this individual went back to her original baseline after finishing the listening part of the intervention. We also, interestingly, had an individual who became seizure-free during the period of listening to Mozart K448. This individual had 5 seizures during 3 months of baseline period, and she became seizure-free during the 3 months of daily listening to Mozart K448, and saw an increase on the number of seizures after finishing listening to Mozart K448. We had 13 individuals in this study. This is a summary of our results. Each bar on this graph shows you the percentage reduction on the number of seizures in these individuals. So we had a distribution of effects basically. One individual showed minus 40% reduction, another one showed minus 60%. One individual showed an increase on the number of seizures while listening to Mozart K448 for 3-month period. And as I told you before, one individual became seizure-free among 13 individuals that we had. The effect size was calculated as the mean differences between paired observations with 95% bootstrapped confidence interval. And in summary, we observed 35% reduction on average on the number of seizures during 3 months of daily listening to Mozart K448. And we saw a 19% increase on the number of seizures during the period of daily listening to scrambled Mozart. Overall, we were able to confirm our hypothesis, observing a reduction in seizure counts during the period of daily listening to Mozart K448. And we also had a large effect size comparing to the rest of the clinical studies. Future is bright in our mind. There are a number of questions in our mind. For example, why Mozart K448? Is there anything special about the structure of Mozart pieces? And could this be a general effect that can be valid for any musical piece? And we decided to focus on the computational approaches to define the structural features of music because of the evidences that we had from the literature. And by structural features of the music, I mean features such as rhythm, pitch, tempo, and how do these features change in time in each musical piece. So we found this interesting publication from Daniel Levitin, who actually had a very interesting book about music and brain. It's called This Is Your Brain on Music. It's a very interesting book. And it basically said that music can be characterized in terms of having an unpredictable or having a predictable rhythmic structure. And rhythm specifically can be characterized as predictable or unpredictable. And in this work, they show that Mozart pieces were among the pieces having an unpredictable rhythmic structure compared to composers such as Beethoven. And interestingly, we connected this work to this work that I mentioned to you a few slides back, that it was reporting a reduction of seizure type activities while individuals were listening to Mozart K448 from Mozart and not during the period of listening to Forellis from Beethoven. So we started to ask this question that how does the structure of Mozart K448 differ from Forellis by Beethoven? Because based on the work that we knew from the literature, one of these pieces caused a reduction in seizure type activities and the other one didn't. And what we did in our previous publication, mathematically, we characterized the rhythm in these two musical pieces, in Mozart K448 and in Forelli's. And in summary, with the help of one of our brilliant master's students in the lab, Marco, we found out that Mozart K448 has less predictable rhythmic structure comparing to Forelli's from Beethoven. And this basically helped us to create the research questions for our future work, for our next work, which we're going to look at the role of unpredictability of the rhythmic structure in musical pieces on reducing seizures in individuals with epilepsy by looking at musical pieces from different composers. So we're not going to focus on one specific piece and one specific composers anymore. We have a hypothesis that helps us to choose musical pieces from other composers as well. For that purpose, we analyzed more than 1,900 classical pieces from an online database to choose the pieces with predictable and unpredictable rhythmic structure. And we think that the unpredictable rhythmic structure, we hypothesize that it could have more benefits in terms of reducing seizures. We still need to show that in our future study. And then we finalize the selection of these musical pieces by considering only piano pieces containing similar scale. They're all in major scale, similar length, below 10 minutes length, and then having similar tempo. And then we are hoping to explore the mechanisms involved in the observed effect by looking at the brain recordings, and hopefully we will be able to propose novel research studies in which individuals with epilepsy can potentially benefit from listening to specific musical pieces during their participation. So we are currently enrolling for our next study. You can find information about the enrollment and the eligibility criteria on our website, neuron2brainlaboratory.ca. But in summary, it's similar to the design of our previous study that I described to you in this presentation. The exclusion criteria includes any history of brain resection surgery or epilepsy surgery, any changes in an individual's anti-seizure medications within the next 1 year, individuals receiving other treatment options, and individuals unable to recall their seizures. We had an incredible team of collaborators this round, Dr. Taufik Valiante, Dr. Daniel Leviton, as well as all the neurologists in the epilepsy clinic of Toronto Western Hospital, and one of the musicologists from U of T as well, which helped us to select the musical pieces for our next work. This is my email address, and more information about both of our studies can be found on our website, www.neuron2brainlaboratory.ca. And with this, I would like to thank, first of all, our participants, individuals with epilepsy, both the past participants and the potential future one, because it's not possible to do this type of research without their meaningful involvement. And we are very grateful to them. I would like to thank Epilepsy Ontario, Krembil Brain Institute, and UHN for their support, as well as all the members of Neuron to Brain Laboratory and Epilepsy Toronto for their support through all these years. And if you have any question, I would be more than happy to answer your question.